Sarah stared in disbelief as the reckless HOA president, Karen, barreled down the driveway for the fifth time that week, her white Mercedes leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. This time, the driveway lights were shattered beyond repair. Sarah clenched her fists, doing everything to contain her rage. She knew Karen's spiteful vendetta would only escalate, but she refused to back down. This was war. Sarah slammed the front door and marched into the living room, her mind racing. "Can you believe the nerve of that woman?" she fumed, pacing back and forth. Her husband, Michael, looked up from his laptop, concern etched on his face. What happened now? Karen hit the driveway lights. Again. Sarah threw her hands up in exasperation. This is the fifth time this month. I'm at my wit's end. Michael winced. Seriously. I thought we got those high-visibility ones to prevent this. Apparently not high visibility enough for Her Royal Majesty. Sarah flopped down on the couch, her shoulders slumped. I don't know what to do, Michael. She's making our lives a living hell. Michael shifted closer and placed a reassuring hand on her knee. We have to do something. This harassment has got to stop. Sarah nodded, her eyes narrowing. I'm not going to let her bully us anymore. It's time to fight back. What did you have in mind? Michael asked, a hint of trepidation in his voice. I'm going to the HOA meeting tomorrow. I'm going to call her out in front of everyone. Sarah's jaw was set with determination. And if that doesn't work, I'm taking this to the next level. Michael's brow furrowed. The next level? What are you? I'm going to install industrial strength lights. Sarah interrupted, a spark of mischief in her eyes. She won't be able to knock those down, no matter how hard she tries. Michael's expression shifted from concern to a reluctant admiration. You know, that's actually not a bad idea. Dan right it's not. Sarah stood up, a renewed sense of purpose in her step. I'm going to Home Depot first thing in the morning. This war is about to get a whole lot brighter. As Sarah marched out of the room, Michael couldn't help but smile. He knew his wife was a force to be reckoned with, and he couldn't wait to see the look on Karen's face when she tried to take down those new lights. The stage was set for an epic showdown, and Sarah was more than ready to take on the HOA tyrant once and for all. The next evening, Sarah strode into the HOA meeting, her shoulders back and her chin held high. She scanned the room, her gaze settling on Karen, who was already holding court, her shrill voice cutting through the chatter. And I simply won't stand for it any longer. Karen was saying, waving her arms dramatically. The driveway lights are a menace, and something must be done. Sarah cleared her throat, and the room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Actually, Karen, I have something to say about that. Karen's eyes narrowed, and a smug smile spread across her face. Well, if it isn't our dear neighbor, Sarah. I'm sure you have some absurd excuse for those unsightly lights of yours. Sarah took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. The lights aren't going anywhere, Karen. In fact, I've upgraded them to industrial strength models. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and Karen's face turned an unflattering shade of puce. You can't do that, she screeched. Those lights are a hazard and an eyesore. Actually, I can, Sarah countered calmly. And I have. They're perfectly within code and will withstand even your reckless driving. She leaned in, a sly smile playing on her lips. Good luck knocking those down. Karen sputtered, her cheeks flushing with rage. This is an outrage. I won't stand for it. Then I suggest you start walking, Karen. Sarah shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Because those lights are here to stay. The other residents erupted into murmurs, some clearly amused by the exchange, others visibly uncomfortable. Sarah held her ground, unflinching in the face of Karen's fury. This isn't over, Sarah, Karen hissed, her eyes narrowed to slits. You're going to regret this. Bring it on, Karen, Sarah retorted, crossing her arms defiantly. I'm ready for you. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. She had drawn a line in the sand, and she had no intention of backing down. The stage was set for an epic showdown, and she was more than ready to face the consequences. The next morning, Sarah woke up early, her mind already racing with plans for the day. She had spent a restless night, replaying the confrontation at the HOA meeting over and over in her mind. She knew Karen wouldn't take this lying down, and she had to be prepared for whatever retaliation was coming. As she made her way to the kitchen, she noticed a flash of movement outside the window. Peering out, she spotted Karen storming across the lawn, her face twisted with fury. Sarah's heart raced, but she steeled herself, determined not to back down. The doorbell rang, and Sarah took a deep breath before opening the door. There stood Karen, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the frame. "What do you want, Karen?" Sarah asked, her voice calm and level. "You know exactly what I want, Sarah," Karen snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Those lights have got to go." "I already told you, Karen, they're not going anywhere," Sarah replied, her tone unwavering. "They're perfectly within code, and I have every right to have them." Karen's nostrils flared, and she took a step closer, her voice dripping with venom. "Well then, I guess I'll just have to take matters into my own hands, won't I?" Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to show any sign of fear. "Is that a threat, Karen?" "Take it however you want," Karen spat, turning on her heel and stalking back towards her car. "But mark my words, Sarah, this isn't over." As Karen peeled out of the driveway, Sarah watched her go, her mind racing. She knew that Karen was not one to back down easily, and she couldn't help but wonder what the vindictive woman had up her sleeve. Later that day, as Sarah was working in the garden, she heard a loud crash from the front of the house. Her heart pounding, she rushed to the driveway, only to find that one of the new industrial-strength lights had been knocked to the ground, the shattered glass glittering in the afternoon sun. Sarah stared at the damage, her hands clenched into fists. She knew, without a doubt, that Karen was behind this. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Determined to find out, Sarah marched back into the house, her mind racing with a plan. She wasn't going to let Karen get away with this. This war was about to get a whole lot more intense. The next morning, Sarah woke up determined to take her fight with Karen to the next level. As she sipped her coffee, she mulled over her options, her mind racing with potential strategies. "All right, time to go on the offensive," she murmured to herself, grabbing her car keys and heading out the door. Her first stop was the local hardware store, where she spent a considerable amount of time browsing the security camera section. After carefully considering her options, she settled on a high-definition, motion-activated system that would capture every inch of her driveway. "This should do the trick," she said to the sales clerk, handing over her credit card. "I need to catch a certain someone in the act." The clerk raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any questions, simply ringing up the purchase and wishing Sarah good luck. Back at home, Sarah spent the better part of the afternoon carefully installing the security cameras, making sure they were positioned to provide the best possible coverage of the driveway and front entrance. Once she was satisfied with the setup, she connected the system to her smartphone, allowing her to monitor the feed from anywhere. As the sun began to set, Sarah settled in front of the TV, keeping a close eye on the camera app. She knew it was only a matter of time before Karen made her move, and she was determined to catch her in the act. Sure enough, just after 8 p.m., the motion sensors were triggered, and Sarah's phone lit up with a notification. She tapped the screen, her eyes widening as she watched Karen's Mercedes pull up to the driveway, the driver's side door swinging open. "Gotcha," Sarah murmured, her fingers flying across the screen as she zoomed in for a closer look. Karen emerged from the car, a can of spray paint in her hand. Sarah watched, her heart pounding, as the HOA president approached the driveway lights, her movements quick and furtive. Just as Karen raised the can, ready to deface the lights, A loud voice rang out from the shadows. "Hold it right there, Karen." Karen froze, the can of spray paint still raised in her hand. Slowly, she turned towards the source of the voice, her eyes widening in alarm. "Sarah," she stammered, her voice quivering. "What are you doing out here?" "Catching you in the act, that's what," Sarah said, stepping out of the shadows, her arms crossed over her chest. "I knew you couldn't resist trying to sabotage my lights." Karen's face flushed with embarrassment, and she hastily tried to hide the spray paint behind her back. "I don't know what you're talking about," she huffed. "I was just, admiring the new lights, that's all." Sarah raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Really, Karen? Because it looks to me like you were about to vandalize them." "Vandalize?" Karen scoffed, her bravado returning. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. I'm the HOA president, for heaven's sake. I would never do something like that." "Save it, Karen." Sarah cut her off, her voice sharp. "I have you on camera. Don't even try to deny it." Karen's eyes darted towards the driveway, where the security cameras were clearly visible. Her face fell, and she knew she had been caught red-handed. "All right, fine," she huffed, crossing her arms defensively. "So what are you going to do about it?" Sarah took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. "I'm going to report you to the authorities, Karen. This is criminal vandalism, and I won't let you get away with it." Karen's eyes widened in horror. "You can't do that," she cried. "I'm the HOA president, for crying out loud. Do you have any idea how much trouble I could get in?" "That's the point, Karen," Sarah said, her tone unyielding. "You've been terrorizing me and my family for months, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. This ends now." Karen's face contorted with panic, and she scrambled to think of a way out of the situation. Wait, she said hastily. "Let's not be too hasty here. Maybe we can, work something out." Sarah regarded her with disdain. "Work something out? I'm sorry, Karen, but I'm done negotiating with you. You had your chance, and you blew it." With that, Sarah turned and headed back towards the house, her finger already dialing the number for the police. As she walked away, she could hear Karen's desperate pleas echoing through the night, but she refused to look back. This was it, the moment of reckoning. Sarah was finally going to put an end to Karen's reign of terror, and she couldn't wait to see the look on the HOA president's face when the cops arrived. The sound of sirens pierced the night air as the police arrived at Sarah's doorstep, her frantic call still ringing in their ears. Karen stood frozen, her spray paint can clutched tightly in her hand as the officers approached. "Ma'am, we received a report of attempted vandalism," one of the officers said, his voice stern. "Would you care to explain what's going on here?" Karen's mouth opened and closed, her mind racing to come up with a plausible excuse. But before she could utter a word, Sarah stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Officer, this woman has been harassing my family for months," she explained, her voice steady. "She's been deliberately damaging our property, and tonight, I caught her red-handed trying to vandalize our new driveway lights." The officers turned their attention to Karen, their eyes narrowing. "Is this true, ma'am?" the first officer asked, his hand resting on his holster. Karen's face flushed with panic, and she frantically shook her head. No, that's not true at all," she cried. "This is all just a misunderstanding. I was simply admiring the lights, that's all." The officers exchanged a skeptical glance, and the second officer stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand over that can of spray paint, and then we're going to need you to come with us to the station for some questions." Karen's eyes widened in horror, and she instinctively clutched the can tighter. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "I'm the HOA president. You can't arrest me." "Ma'am, I'm afraid we can, and we will," the first officer said, his voice brooking no argument. "You're under arrest for attempted vandalism and harassment. Now, hand over the can and come with us." Panic-stricken, Karen reluctantly handed over the can of spray paint, her hands trembling. As the officers cuffed her and led her to the waiting patrol car, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. "This isn't over, Sarah," Karen screamed, her voice echoing through the night. "You're going to pay for this." Sarah watched as the car pulled away, a small smile playing on her lips. "We'll see about that, Karen," she murmured, before turning and heading back inside, her head held high. With Karen finally behind bars, Sarah knew that the worst was over. But she also knew that the battle wasn't won just yet. Karen was desperate, and she would stop at nothing to get her revenge. This war was far from over, and Sarah was more than ready to fight to the bitter end. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. The news of Karen's arrest had spread like wildfire through the neighborhood, and she found herself the subject of both praise and scrutiny. Some of the residents applauded her for taking a stand against the HOA president's bullying tactics, while others questioned whether she had gone too far. Sarah, however, remained steadfast in her conviction that she had done the right thing. As she sat at the kitchen table, sipping her morning coffee, Michael entered the room, a concerned look on his face. "Hey, have you seen the news this morning?" he asked, his brow furrowed. Sarah shook her head, her heart sinking. "No, what is it?" Michael gestured towards the living room, where the TV was quietly playing the local news. "It seems Karen has been released on bail," he said, his voice low. Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What?" she exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "How is that possible?" "Apparently, she was able to post bail and has been released pending her trial," Michael explained, his expression grim. Sarah paced the kitchen, her mind racing. She had been so sure that Karen would be locked up for good, and the thought of the vindictive woman being back on the streets sent a chill down her spine. "This is bad, Michael," she said, her voice laced with worry. "You know she's not going to let this go. She's going to come after us hard." Michael reached out and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy, Sarah. But we're not going to let her win, okay? We're in this together." Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. I can't let her intimidate me. I'm going to keep fighting, no matter what." Just then, the doorbell rang, and Sarah felt her heart leap into her throat. "It's her. I just know it," she whispered, her hands trembling. Steeling herself, Sarah strode to the front door and pulled it open, her eyes narrowing as she came face to face with a smug-looking Karen. Well, look who's out of jail," Sarah said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Karen's lips curled into a twisted smile. "That's right, Sarah, and I'm not going anywhere." Sarah braced herself for whatever was to come, her resolve hardening with every passing second.